Welcome back. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Big Bang Theory, Season 1, Episode 4. The episode is titled The Luminous Fish Effect. It gets this title because, as we see in this episode, Sheldon does an experiment to make goldfish glow in the dark. So to start this episode off, we see Leonard and Sheldon getting ready for a department party at the university they work at, Caltech. Sheldon's not a very socially outgoing person, so he doesn't want to go. He said he's not going to enjoy it, but they get ready, they go. We see them at the party with Raj at a buffet table. Raj, we learn something very interesting about him here, and that's that despite being from India, he does not like Indian food. We next see Howard enter the party with a woman that we find out he's paid to be there with him. So it just continues down the creepy trail for Howard. So the group gets introduced to their new boss and department head, Dr. Gable Hauser. Sheldon insults him and is, we find out, fired. Sheldon seems a little shocked at first, but quickly rebounds, and the next morning Leonard finds him in the kitchen cooking eggs, and Sheldon reveals he's actually doing an experiment to try to improve the eggs. Leonard asks him if he's concerned about getting his job back, and Sheldon says no. And Sheldon actually gives an interesting timeline here. He says for the last 3.5 years he's been looking at equations. For 4 years before that, he was working on his thesis. Before that, he was in college, and before that, he was in 5th grade. So here we actually get an interesting look at the accelerated pace of Sheldon's education. So Sheldon continues his experiment, discovers he needs more eggs. Penny comes in asking if he needs anything from the store. So Sheldon decides to tag along with her, get some eggs. We get a scene with Penny and Sheldon in the car, and Sheldon is concerned with Penny's driving. He gives her an explanation, but is distracted. They get to the store, and Penny's a little annoyed with Sheldon. He's giving her information she doesn't want and commenting on her vitamin choices. By the time they get back to their apartments, Penny's ready to go her own ways. We learn something else about Sheldon here, and that's that with his way he does not really have boundaries in the right way. He openly talks to Penny about her period and how she could buy tampons in a bulk amount, and that would be beneficial to her. Penny basically decides to end the conversation just by closing the door. Leonard next comes home and finds Sheldon working with some goldfish. He explains that he's moved on from his egg research because there's no more advancement that could be made there, and he is instead trying to make glow-in-the-dark goldfish. He said it's going to be their billion-dollar idea. He also has a separate business idea for a bulk mail order tampon business. So in his free time, Sheldon seems pretty business-minded. So next it gets revealed, it's time jumped a little bit, it's been 3 weeks, we come to find out Leonard's gotten worried about Sheldon and his state, and he's called in Sheldon's mother. This is a very interesting point in the show to meet Sheldon's mother, played by Laurie Metcalf. This is another actress that Johnny Galecki, Leonard, has history with from the Roseanne show. They played together on that show. It's the second episode in a row that he's had a former castmate from Roseanne appear on the show, so that's pretty interesting. They enter the apartment to find Sheldon working with the loom. She asks him why, and he goes through his progression. He says he was working with Luminous Fish, and that gave him the idea, well, loom. Sheldon is upset that Leonard called his mother and decides to lock himself in his room. She goes ahead and decides to make dinner for the rest of the group. We learn a little bit about Sheldon's mother here. We learn that she's a religious woman. We also learn some more about Sheldon. We learn that his father has passed away at this point. We also learn a little bit about Sheldon in his past. She goes on to tell him how Sheldon has always been a difficult person, even as a child, and how his desires and ambitions as a scientist have gotten him in trouble. We establish that Sheldon's mother is a very religious woman. She references her faith multiple times in this episode. So she tries to be patient, give Sheldon time to come to his senses, but by the next morning, she's decided enough's enough. She goes in and tells Sheldon that he's going to get ready, he's going to go to work, and he's going to apologize. They do. They go to the school. Sheldon apologizes in his way, the best way he probably can. However, Dr. Gablehauser is more interested in Sheldon's mother. They begin talking. He ends up giving Sheldon his job back, and we end the episode with Sheldon talking to his mother, asking if Dr. Gablehauser is going to be his new father, and she says she's not sure. And we see the luminous fish, the glow-in-the-dark goldfish nightlight that is now working beside Sheldon's bed, and that is the end of The Big Bang Theory, Season 1, Episode 4. So there are some interesting points to this episode. This episode largely focuses on Sheldon. We see that Sheldon is rather prideful, and he's willing to lose his job to defend a point that he believes to be true. We also see that Sheldon kind of needs his job to help him focus. When he's away from his job and he's at home, he goes down a rabbit hole of thoughts trails. We see a little bit into the history of Sheldon. His mother gives us a little bit of history into his childhood in this episode. I like her point that she expresses to him that Sheldon, it's okay to be smarter than everybody else, you just can't tell him about it. The other key part to this episode is the introduction of Sheldon's mother. She's a very important character to the show because, as we see, she is someone that Sheldon does respect. Even though he wasn't happy that she was there because Leonard called her, he does listen to her in the end when she tells him that it's time to get up, apologize, and get your job back. They made a wonderful casting choice for Sheldon's mother. I don't think anybody else could have done it better. This episode does a wonderful job building up Sheldon's character. Sheldon is by far my personal favorite character on the show. There's a lot of depth to his character, and this episode does a great job of just establishing some of that history. So for a score for this episode, I would give this episode an 8 out of 10, which has been my average for the episode so far. Let me know what you think in the comments. Give me your favorite parts of the episode. Thank you as always for listening. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and keep an eye out for episode 5 coming soon.